Now sport, and the millionaire publisher Robert Maxwell has withdrawn his bid to buy Tottenham Hotspur, paving the way for computer tycoon Alan Sugar and manager Terry Venables to take control. Alex Spilius reports.
Tottenham, with debts of £20 million, are more than likely to accept Alan Sugar's offer after a year of troubled negotiations and failed deals. Sugar, the head of electronics group Amstrad, will take a place on the board if the bid succeeds, and Terry Venables is likely to become managing director. They have pledged to retain the club's prize assets, Paul Gascoigne and Gary Lineker, a combination that will win favour with supporters. Robert Maxwell's arrival would have meant the departure of Venables, who won the FA Cup for Spurs in May. The club chairman, Irving Scholar, would probably have to leave if the £14 million rescue package goes through. Alex Spilius, TVM News.
The 1 o'clock news from the BBC with Philip Hayton.
Good afternoon. Tottenham Hotspur are expected to announce later today who will be the owners of the football club next season. The publisher, Robert Maxwell, withdrew his offer overnight. That leaves the joint bid from the current manager, Terry Venables, and the entrepreneur, Alan Sugar, as the only offer for the club.
No comment so far as fans waited for news at White Hart Lane, but both Tottenham PLC and the Terry Venables-Alan Sugar partnership have said this morning that they're confident at some time today of making a formal announcement which would install Sugar on the board and the FA Cup winning manager as managing director. Terry Venables' reaction to the withdrawal of Robert Maxwell was that he wouldn't celebrate until the ball was in the net. But if and when Venables does announce that he's achieved his goal, it'll be as widely popular around Tottenham as the cup final result itself.
They realise that the future of the club is with Venables. The players, the supporters and all the staff of the club have made it clear that they want Venables to succeed.
The question of Paul Gascoigne and his eventual destination remains open. Lazio may even now be reconciling themselves to the likelihood that the player will want to stay with a manager he respects. Venables' priority will be to cancel the complicated but essentially provisional £4.5 million transfer made with the Italian club. Gascoigne's retention is now possible since Tottenham's financial situation is no longer as desperate as it once was. Spurs have been given another year to clear their £11 million debt with the Midland Bank, and the Venables-Sugar deal will inject £7.5 million into the club. The saga, well into extra time already, is close to the final whistle. A tearful conclusion is not expected.
The 6 o'clock news from the BBC with Peter Sissons and Moira Stewart.
Good evening. The head Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are expected to announce tonight who will be the club's new owners next season. It now appears virtually certain that control of Spurs will go to the current manager, Terry Venables, and businessman Alan Sugar. Their joint bid is the only offer for the club remaining after the publisher Robert Maxwell withdrew his bid overnight.
No official announcement so far. Instead, the broadest possible hint that the deal had been done as champagne was served outside White Hart Lane this afternoon. Terry Venables is likely to be as popular as managing director as he was as manager amongst both club employees and fans.
Yeah, his heart is in the club. It's not just a business deal for him, it's the whole lot. It's the supporters, the players.
With the money provided by Sugar, he should be able to afford new players and, solve our problems, our financial problems anyway.
The FA Cup winning manager's reaction to the withdrawal of Robert Maxwell was to say that he wouldn't celebrate until the ball was in the back of the net. Whether those celebrations will include the mixture of joy and relief that would come with the retention of Paul Gascoigne remains an open question. But it seems likely that the player will want to stay with a manager he deeply respects. Gascoigne's transfer to the Italian club Lazio is largely provisional and from the financial point of view no longer imperative to the club. Tottenham has another year now to clear its £11 million debt with the Midland Bank, and the Alan Sugar-Terry Venables deal should inject £7.5 million. This long-running saga, already well into injury time, is close to the final whistle. A tearful conclusion is not expected.
With tonight's news from around the southeast, here's Anna Maria. Good evening.
Hello there, Frank, and good evening. Spurs manager Terry Venables is still waiting to hear whether he's finally won control of the club. An announcement is expected any time now that Venables and computer tycoon Alan Sugar have clinched their takeover bid. The bid from Robert Maxwell collapsed overnight. Our reporter Stuart Maister is at White Hart Lane now. Well, Stuart, can you tell us the latest state of play there?
Well, Anne-Marie, negotiations concerning the details of the takeover have been taking place all day, but we are told an announcement is imminent. Having said that, there have been announcements like that before. But this is the end of a terrible year for Tottenham, which started when there was speculation about their financial problems, but also the culmination, it seems, of a lifetime's dream for Terry Venables. Terry Venables supported Spurs as a boy. As a young man, he played for them, though he wasn't a great success there. But he was as a manager at Crystal Palace and Queen's Park Rangers before becoming boss of Barcelona in Spain, who promptly won the championship. 2 years later, the sack, but Venables became Spurs boss after David Pleat was forced to leave.
Stuart, can you give us the background to today's developments at Spurs?
Well, it has been a horrible year with all sorts of ups and downs, but the most recent reason was withdrawal by Robert Maxwell of his bid, the latest person to say he wanted to buy Spurs, even though he apparently bid more than the Venables Sugar Consortium. But nevertheless, it seems his bid was withdrawn. And that was in the face of opposition from people like Bernie Kingsley of the independent Spurs supporters. Bernie, what's your reaction to what's happening?
We're obviously extremely pleased. We remain cautious until the deal is finally signed, but this is really what we've been working for the past few months.
What difference would Terry Venables make as manager?
We think primarily because he's a football man, and he has the respect of the supporters and of his players, and we think he can bring in a new era for Tottenham Hotspur.
Well, Anne-Marie, people here wishing for a new era at Tottenham Hotspur.
Finally, before you go, what's this all going to mean for the future of Paul Gascoigne?
Well, I spoke today to Mel Steen, who represents Paul Gascoigne, and he made it clear that Paul has not yet signed for Lazio. That transfer deal with the Italian club hasn't formally gone ahead. So Terry Venables, when he, as we assume he will, takes over, could say, you're still a Spurs man. You've got 2 years of your contract to run. However, Mel Steen made it clear Paul does not want to be treated like a piece of meat, just told he wants to be consulted and asked, what do you want to do? Spurs fans hoped he'll say, yes, I want to stay.
Let's hope he does. We await the announcement and we may very well bring it to you during the programme.
The news from ITN.
Birkenhead Labour Party decides on the fate of Frank Field. The Spurs manager Terry Venables and the businessman Alan Sugar have won their battle to buy the debt-ridden soccer club. Venables is now set to become the club's managing director.
9 tortuous months of cash crisis ended at White Hart Lane this morning when Alan Sugar and Terry Venables finally announced they were buying Spurs for £7.5 million, despite a last-minute intervention last night by Robert Maxwell.
My first task, as far as I'm concerned, is to get the balance sheet into shape and can safely rely upon Terry to look after the football side.
On the crucial question of whether Paul Gascoigne will stay at Spurs, some doubt about whether the Lazio deal has gone too far.
We don't know the state of play, whether it's too far gone, whether there's enough money on the table or what, I really don't know. And Terry's got to sort that out next week.
There's got to be a life after Paul Gascoigne, if it has to be. That's for the club, that's for the people, and if it has to be that we go under, for the sake of that, it can't be. Every party knows that, even you sitting out there.
But as they met the fans, the new owners pledged keeping Gaza, if they could, was a top priority. Giles Smith, ITN Sport, White Hart Lane.
Alan Sugar's first priority for Spurs, sort out the finances. Good afternoon, this is Sky News Live at 5. I'm Chris Mann.
I'm Kay Burley. A very good afternoon to you. The top story on Live at 5 this Saturday afternoon. Businessman Alan Sugar and manager Terry Venables have clinched the deal, which should ensure the future of Tottenham Hotspur. The Amstrad chairman says he'll provide the financial clout to save the club. His first priority will be to sort out its finances. On the future of Spurs and England superstar Paul Gascoigne, Terry Venables was clear. He said the club would be pretty stupid if it didn't want to keep Gaza.
Just get this picture. Yeah, okay.
It felt a bit like winning the cup again. For the Cockney duo, the right result after a series of hard-fought earlier rounds. With £2.7 million up front, much more in the kitty, and the backing of the Spurs board, the manager and the businessman have bought effective control of the club. The money won't immediately solve the club's financial crisis, but it's a vital cash injection. The club owes £18 million, 11 million to the bank. Venables had pursued the deal for more than 6 months.
I don't think it's quite sunk in yet. I mean, it's been such an ordeal for not just for me and certain gentlemen on this top table, but all around the club, both here at the club and at the training ground. It's been very difficult to put any light on the case, and that's put everybody in limbo. I think it's given us all a bit of breathing space and helped the fact that we won the cup, and everyone's delighted about that.
For Alan Sugar, the attraction is to see if he can match Tottenham's footballing honours with success in the boardroom.
This football club proposition is a challenge, as far as I'm concerned. It's also very much a commercial proposition. Let me make it quite plain that a football fanatic I am not. I'm not, but a Tottenham Hotspur supporter I am.
But Tottenham Hotspur, he insisted, was a business, not a charitable trust. And that raised the question of star player Paul Gascoigne, who's on the verge of signing a lucrative transfer deal to an Italian club.
I, right from the beginning, said I was prepared to leave the club because I just felt it wasn't going in the right direction if we let Gascoigne go. There's been a lot of events since then, and a lot of things have happened, and I said we're not clear about what's happened. We will do everything we can, but we also got to remember in this game is that I've said for a long time, finance is the most important thing.
The supporters, too, would prefer Gascoigne to stay, but like the club's new owners, they're realistic.
It wouldn't be the end of the world. There is life after Gaza, as there was after Hoddle, Waddle. You know, we've lost many players over the past, and I'm sure we'll have greater players in the future.
Spurs fans believe they've got the dream ticket, the astute businessman and the successful manager, and the duo have promised they'll keep their roles separate. As Alan Sugar said, Terry Venables will look after the 11 players on the pitch. I'll look after the £11 million we owe the bank. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
Here, the Spurs manager, Terry Venables, and millionaire businessman Alan Sugar have taken control of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. It ends 11 months of uncertainty about the club's future. Each of them is investing more than £3.5 million, but neither could give any assurances that Paul Gascoigne would stay with Spurs.
At last, Alan Sugar and Terry Venables together at Spurs. Today's confirmation is 24 hours later than planned, thanks to another unsuccessful intervention yesterday from Robert Maxwell. Their assessment of the debt-ridden club's business prospects was upbeat, but on the possibility of cancelling Paul Gascoigne's £4.5 million transfer to the Italian club Lazio, there was deliberate caution.
We don't know the state of play. Whether it's too far gone, whether there's enough money on the table or what, I really don't know. And Terry's got to sort that out next week.
We would all be pretty stupid if we didn't want to keep Paul Gascoigne. There is two problems, as you say. Unlike most businesses, there's the shareholders and supporters. They're the two things, and sometimes they're the same. What we've got to make sure is that the position is good for everybody.
Venables' undoubted popularity with the fans would be vulnerable if Gascoigne did have to go. Outside, as he posed with his new chairman, there came an ironic but hilarious double take.
Oh, yeah, leg, yeah. Do you want a picture? My leg's better now.
The Gaza look-alike as buoyant as the rest.
The news today really puts the seal on it, and this is the start of a new era for Tottenham Hotspur.
But on Gascoigne, the question remains. Will Sugar and Venables please the fans, or the city, or both?
The news from ITN.
And Venables and Sugar finally get Spurs. Good evening.
The great Tottenham Hotspur saga finally ended today when Terry Venables and the computer magnate Alan Sugar announced they'd taken control. Almost a year of financial chaos, rumour and counter-rumour were finally ended this morning. The takeover almost fell at the last, Robert Maxwell apparently making a last-ditch bid last night, but it failed, and Sugar had Spurs for £7 million.
My first task, as far as I'm concerned, is to get the balance sheet into shape and can safely rely upon Terry to look after the football side.
On the crucial question of whether Paul Gascoigne will stay at Spurs, some doubt about whether the Lazio deal may have gone too far.
We don't know the state of play. Whether it's too far gone, whether there's enough money on the table or what, I really don't know. And Terry's got to sort that out next week.
There's got to be a life after Paul Gascoigne, if it has to be. That's for the club, that's for the people, and if it has to be that we go under, for the sake of that, it can't be. Every party knows that, even you sitting out there.
But as they met the fans, the new owners pledged keeping Gaza, if they could, was their top priority.
Spurs manager Terry Venables and computer tycoon Alan Sugar announced their successful takeover of the club. Venables will handle the 11 players on the field, Sugar the £11 million in the bank. And as we saw there in Newsfile, the great Spurs takeover saga finally ended yesterday, with manager Terry Venables becoming managing director. It's the first time in football history that an English manager has risen from the dugout to the director's box as MD. For Venables, it's another step in a remarkable career. As a player, he represented his country at every level and was a cup-winning manager both here and abroad. Off the field, he's written a best-selling novel and television series, masterminded a top-selling board game, owns a string of properties, and now has invested £3.5 million in a First Division football club. Yesterday, in his hour of triumph, Stuart Maister asked him about his future plans for Tottenham.
Terry Venables, the end of a long road for you. Could you just give me your feelings, if you would, as you've reached this point?
Well, it's not like winning the cup, because then winning the cup is finished and you've done the job. We've done half the job and got to the position we are now, and the anticipation of getting on with it, I'm looking forward to.
Well, briefly, what are your plans now for Tottenham, now that you've taken them over?
To stabilise the club. We've been in a very, very bad situation, and it's not an easy one for anyone. We've still got huge debts at the club, and they've got to be dealt with, and we've got to hold this ship steady before we try to turn it around. And as quick as we can, we want to get back into the business of competing with everybody else player-wise, but at the moment that's not possible, but we will be doing it as quick as anyway. It's not a magic wand we've got a lot of work to do, and the supporters have helped us tremendously, and I think it's helped us win the day in the end, and we just want that sort of liaison to continue.
What is then the next step? You've taken over the club, you've come at the end of this long road. What happens now?
That's just simple now. I mean, we just get on with what we've always done and try to make sure that we go forward. It's very simple.
You had to offer to buy the shares of all of those others who own shares in the club as part of the city rules for taking over Tottenham.
That's right.
What's your message to those people, though, who own shares, who you're now offering to buy?
Well, what we want to happen, what is very, very important for us to happen, is for the supporters really to support us by not selling those shares. We've got a substantial hold in it, and as you say, the stock exchange say we must make a complete offer, which we have, but every penny we spend out towards those shareholders will not go into the club, so we obviously want that money to go into the club and to the shareholders to stick with their shares, and I don't think they'll be disappointed.
For those tens of thousands of supporters who've been as frustrated as you have over the past year, who've watched this great club seemingly going into decline off the field, what's your message to them now? What can you promise them?
Well, it went to decline in the bank. The players didn't go into decline, and nor did the supporters. That's what's kept us fighting through all this, and now we hope to reward each other by working together.
Terry Venables, but still no definite word on the future of Paul Gascoigne. The fans naturally hope he may now stay. We shall see.